Okay, I've gotten the screws out, and I'm going to try to illustrate a little what I was talking about earlier with regards to this right here is sort of this plastic nub, and this is this notch that's attached to the rim of the wheel. So you've got to be careful when you're pulling this out. It's very free on top, but on the bottom it just kind of pops straight up. But this wheel is actually a lot easier to work with than this, because with this wheel you had to deal with this whole thing and slide it up and under like that, and still deal with these two. So the rim on this wheel is actually a lot cleaner. So we'll pull that out, take a look at this dreaded connector on the back, and see, that doesn't look too bad. I don't know, famous last words, but it looks like it's got a lot less if it has any epoxy on it. So I'm going to go ahead and detach that. See if I can just... Still feels a little fragile, so I'm going to take my time and go ahead and run a little flathead screwdriver or razor blade along the edge there to make sure it's freed. Okay, I got it disconnected. This connector right here off of the back. Set this down carefully again. Again, there was this glue, hard to see here, but this sort of yellow glue that was on the connector, and very fragile around there, trying to yank it out. So I was trying to be very, very gentle, whittle it away a little bit with a flat blade screwdriver. You know, so far everything else about this procedure has been easy. I'm sure if I get everything put back together and it's all working properly, I'm going to love having the ultimate combo of the two wheels, but that was pretty hairy. I don't recommend that to anyone with the glue unless we can come up with a better way to sort of release that. So I'm definitely going to ask Thomas at Fanatec about that and how that works, because it's very precarious to just start yanking on it. Don't want to pull anything loose off the circuit board, or in this case I almost had a wire that I nicked with a pair of pliers. And certainly I don't want one of these little wires coming loose. Wouldn't be a good thing. So anyway, I just put some epoxy over the edges of the wires again. I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes just to make sure everything's extra strong and reinforced for when I put it all back together. Okay, got the cables threaded through. So I'm going to take this orange cover off because I'm going to swap the covers too while I'm swapping everything else out. One interesting point, here's the rim that we're going to end up putting our electronics in from our Turbo S wheel. I see on this one, you can see the vibration motors are right here for the rim itself. Those are the cables that connect them. And an interesting thing about the paddle shifters, I thought they were the same. This is the Turbo S, and if you look on the back, although they're using the same black plates now, this piece, again apologies for the one-handed camera work, this piece right here is actually molded into the wheel. It's part of the plastic of the wheel. So when you click on this from the back, you're pushing the plastic of the wheel forward, and it's got resistance because you're pushing plastic, and that's what triggers the button on the back. If you look at this, it has the same pedal, but it's not pushing an actual piece of the plastic on the wheel. It's just kind of a floating hinge that's sitting in here, and when it moves with much less resistance. Now I think when there's a wheel, you know, the rest of the guts of the wheel in here and it's all sealed up, it's probably fine. I never noticed it to be too flappy of a flappy paddle, if you will. It's always seemed fine to me. But it is interesting that they are a different design. So now I'm just going to swap the electronics and put the Turbo S circuit board in here and attach it to the Turbo S base. And then we'll do the same thing for the other wheel. One interesting thing to note about this Turbo S wheel versus the other wheels that I've been using, the GT3RS wheel, is that this one, the number 3 metric hex does not work in these longer bolts. For some reason this wheel is put together all with 2.5s. So the same wrench that works down here works up here as well. Thought I was doing something wrong at first. So I'll get these loosened up. And then the cover should come off. I did read in an email from Thomas, or Armin, that you have to, if you're going to swap the covers on these, and you want the orange cover on the Turbo S wheel, the hybrid wheel that you're making, you have to do that, swap the covers before you reassemble everything. Not sure exactly why, but I'm just going to follow instructions. So, whoops, there's those. And then there's this one extra screw right here that has to be disconnected as well. It's pretty tight, I don't want to strip it, so I'm going to get the right screwdriver and take that off, and then I'll swap the covers. This is the inside of the Turbo S wheel. Excuse me, the GT3RS wheel, just in case anybody wants to see any of the differences. No on-off switch on this one, permanently wired USB. Which is kind of a pain when you're disconnecting it from a cockpit or something like that, because I had the wires all fished down through the aluminum tubing. But very well put together overall. No issues with belt slippage or anything like that. These are the holes that you use to connect to the frame, and not sure, I had read a caution that you could mess it up if you screw them in too far. I don't know if that comes into play on this side. It doesn't look like there's anything that has to do with the belt over here. On this side, same situation, although there is a circuit board there. It's interesting, there's a little connector here. Anyway, so I'm not really sure what the cause for that would be, but definitely be careful, because that's the word that's come out of Fanatec on some of the support forums like iRacing and stuff, is to not over tighten those screws when you're screwing it down to the cockpit. So I'm going to go ahead and swap the covers and start to replace all the electronics. One other point I just wanted to make about this while I'm at it, I noticed I heard a little metallic noise when I grabbed the cover, and it might be a little hard to see here, but there are little sliding T-nuts, not really T-nuts, but they're little sliding nuts that slide into here and catch the hex threads that come down through the bottom of the case. So they can slide out, and one of them had, on both of the two covers that I have, I guess I was handling it a little casually, have slidden out. So they just slide back in. But before you reassemble everything, make sure that those are all in place. And I have one missing, so I'm going to have to go on a hunt here and find it. Anyway, just a tip.